And the last words I heard Big said, just do it. I said, that shit could have been a Nike commercial.
Did you see him? Did you look at him when he's shot? You spoke to him when he shot up. And
I didn't speak to him. Kenny, I'm in front of him. When Puff got in the back seat of him, and I'm telling you, whatever y'all do, don't let him go to sleep. Don't let him go to sleep. I'm in front of him. I'm in front right here in Big, talking to Big. Y'all don't let him go to sleep. Yo, Big, stay up, Big. Don't let him go to sleep.
And then boom.
And then Kenny said, yo, Big, I'm gonna get you to the hospital.
C.J. Wallace is now older than his father ever lived to be. Christopher Wallace, the notorious B.I.G, was 24 years old when he was killed. His son C.J. is 28. He has already lived 4 years longer than the man whose name he carries, whose face he sees when he looks in the mirror, and whose voice he can only know through recordings. That single fact is the most honest summary of what C.J. Wallace's life actually is, and it is far more complicated and far more painful than most people who love Biggie's music ever stop to think about. Let's go back to where this story really starts. C.J. Wallace was born on October 29, 1996 in New York City. His parents were Christopher Wallace and Faith Evans, one of the most iconic couples in the history of hip-hop. On paper, being born into that family sounds like winning some extraordinary lottery. But here is what that actually meant in real life. His father was shot and killed on March 9, 1997, just 4 months and 10 days after CJ was born. Biggie was 24. CJ was still an infant. He would never form a single real memory of his father. Not one moment, not one touch, not one word spoken directly to him. Nothing. And that is where the sadness in this story actually lives. Not in failure, not in poverty, in an absence so total and so permanent that nothing in the world can fill it. Now let's talk about who Biggie actually was, because to understand the weight CJ carries, you have to understand the size of what left. Christopher George Latore Wallace grew up in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, the son of a Jamaican immigrant mother named Voletta. He ran the streets as a teenager, caught cases, did time, and then somewhere inside all of that, a talent emerged that was genuinely unlike anything the genre had seen. He signed to Bad Boy Records under Sean Combs in the early 1990s. His 1994 debut, Ready to Die, redefined East Coast hip-hop, raw, cinematic, confessional, and brilliant in a way that almost no debut album in rap history has matched. By the mid-1990s, he was the undisputed king of New York. His flow was deceptively relaxed but immaculately precise. His storytelling put you inside the scene so completely that listening felt like watching a movie. And then the East Coast-West Coast beef with Tupac and Death Row Records consumed everything. Tupac was killed in Las Vegas on September 13, 1996, 6 weeks before CJ was born. Biggie was killed 6 months later, just after midnight following the Soul Train Music Awards in Los Angeles, when an unknown gunman opened fire from a dark-colored Chevrolet Impala. His second album, Life After Death, was released 16 days later and debuted at number 1. The world mourned loudly, endlessly, publicly. The person who paid the highest price for that loss was a 4-month-old infant who did not yet have the words to understand what had been taken from him. Growing up as the son of a legend who died before you could know him is a specific kind of grief that most people have no reference for. CJ did not get to grieve privately. His father was everywhere, on the radio, in documentaries, on magazine covers, on strangers' t-shirts, in the record collections of people who had never set foot in Brooklyn. Every anniversary of Biggie's death brought new tributes, new interviews, new coverage from people who knew his father, often far better and far longer than CJ ever could. Imagine being 7 years old and watching strangers cry over your father on television. Imagine not knowing whether to feel comforted or confused by the fact that millions of people claim a piece of someone who never had the chance to truly claim you. That emotional reality does not get resolved cleanly. It lives in you permanently. CJ's mother, Faith Evans, became both mother and father in that household from the very beginning. And let's be clear about who she is. Faith Evans was already an established artist in her own right, with a voice that stopped people cold and an inner strength she would need far more than she anticipated. After Biggie's death, she raised CJ alongside his older half-sister Tiana, managed her own music career, and worked to protect Christopher Wallace's legacy from an industry that can be ruthless about exploiting artists even after death. She has spoken openly about the challenge of helping CJ know Biggie not just as a legend but as a man, with complexity, humor, love, and flaws. That is some of the hardest parenting work imaginable, done while the entire world was watching. Over time, the financial value of Biggie's estate grew substantially. Music analysts and estate experts have estimated its current value at over $100 million, driven by streaming revivals, licensing deals, biographical projects, merchandise, and tribute exhibitions that created entirely new revenue streams. Voletta Wallace has been fiercely protective of her son's image and music, working alongside legal representatives and family to ensure his legacy is used with integrity. CJ has been increasingly involved in those decisions as he has grown older. But access to wealth does not mean you are okay. It means your material needs are met. It does not mean the hole left by a missing father is anywhere close to filled. CJ has made deliberate choices about how to build his own identity. In 2009, at 12 years old, he was cast in the biographical film Notorious, not as a peripheral character, but as a young version of his own father. A boy who never knew Biggie had to step in front of cameras and embody him on screen. That experience, by every account, was intensely emotional. He later appeared in Everything Must Go, Kicks, and a season of Scream, Resurrection, building an acting career that existed on its own terms. He also made the deliberate choice not to rap. That decision deserves more credit than it gets. The cultural expectation was enormous. You are Biggie's son. Surely you are picking up the mic. CJ understood that trying to out-rap a ghost is an impossible game. Instead, in 2020 he released Ready to Dance, a debut music project of house and electronic dance tracks that reimagined songs from his father's catalog in a completely different genre. It was his own creative interpretation of Biggie's music, filtered through something new, introducing the catalog to a different audience while carving out a sound that was distinctly his. He also founded Think Big, a nonprofit focused on educational resources and music education for underserved youth in Brooklyn, connecting his father's roots directly to tangible community work. He launched B.K.THC, a cannabis brand tied to advocacy for legalization and criminal justice reform, work that reflects a genuine awareness of how drug enforcement policies have devastated the same communities Biggie's music documented. These are not passive legacy projects. They are active choices about where to point a name that carries real weight. And then 2025 arrived, and everything got significantly more complicated. In July 2025, CJ was named as a defendant in a civil lawsuit filed in Los Angeles Superior Court by an anonymous plaintiff identified only as John Doe. The complaint alleged that CJ had helped facilitate a 2020 encounter in which Sean Combs sexually assaulted the plaintiff at a Revolt TV location, luring him there under the false pretense of a business opportunity tied to Biggie's estate, specifically a remix project of Ready to Die. CJ and the other named defendants flatly denied every allegation. His legal team called it a calculated smear campaign. In November 2025, CJ filed a federal defamation countersuit against the plaintiff's representative, arguing that the assault story had been fabricated in retaliation for a failed business project and that he had suffered professional damage, humiliation, and mental anguish as a direct result of the public accusations. As of now, the legal proceedings are ongoing, and CJ maintains his complete innocence. Sit with that for a second. This is a man who grew up without his father, spent his entire adult life trying to build something meaningful with the name he was given, and now finds himself in the middle of a lawsuit tied directly to his father's music legacy and his father's former label head. The very world that Biggie built his career inside has reached forward across nearly 3 decades and pulled CJ into his most damaging public chapter. That is not just sad in a general sense. That is a specific compounding weight that most coverage of this story completely misses. CJ Wallace has built real things. Think Big reaches real kids in Brooklyn. BKTHC is tied to real advocacy work. His acting career spans 15 years across multiple projects. He has used his father's name to advocate for communities that need it, and to modernize a legacy that could have easily been reduced to nostalgia. Those achievements are real and they matter, but none of that cancels the emotional truth underneath. His father was 24 years old when he was killed. CJ is now 28. He has lived through a phase of life his father never reached. He has had accomplishments and struggles his father will never know about. He has carried a name the entire world assigned meaning to before he ever had a chance to define himself. He constructed a father entirely from fragments, Photographs, recordings, stories from people who loved Christopher Wallace and are still trying to keep him alive. That is the real story. Not the estate value, or the lawsuit, or the film roles. Behind all of it, there is a son who just wanted his father, and a father who will never know the man his son became. What are your thoughts on everything CJ Wallace has been carrying? Drop them in the comments. Subscribe for more stories like this one.